after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
All right, what's up, everybody? We're back at a brand new. This is a brand new episode of well, actually, not just a brand new episode, a brand new show. Moving the goalposts, episode 1. On this new, you might know me from some of my old shows, Out of Line and Tricks and Picks, which are now defunct. Liam was, who is now a co-host on this show, was a frequent guest on my old shows, and we moved over to a different network, as you can see. So you can follow us on at ETB at MTGP at MTGPETB on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can, follow follow Empty the Bench at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. And you can follow Empty the Bench Network on YouTube, where you'll find all these shows. YouTube.com/ETB Network. And ETBpodcast.com, where you could find any of your podcasts. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find this podcast. All right, Liam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for this show. I think it's going to be really fun, and I've been excited to do this first episode for a while, so yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, well, it's taken a long time, All right, so I do want to get into some of the this NFL stuff all the NFL stuff going on. Lots of big news. Of course, Monday night we had that. We saw the Bills lose. The Bills are this team is like in free fall right now. I mean, they look like, honestly, I think the Bills right now look kind of like the Mets of football. I mean, they were supposed to be like possibly the best team in the NFL these past 2 seasons. And this year they're like 5-5. And I saw them lose in a way that looked like the Jets would lose. It was a missed field goal, but called back because of 12 men on the field.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they lost the game. I mean, obviously that was why they lost the game, but they didn't really deserve to win. And they were 8-point favorites going up 1 point. Denver had a mess up on the extra point in the first half, so it should have been tied anyway. And the Bills have just been bad. I mean, I kind of said last year they had an easy schedule. Josh Allen, I don't think is as good as people think he is. Well, yeah, and they've shown that this year.
I think that Josh Allen is good. He just makes a whole lot of mistakes.
Well, he doesn't. The one thing about him is he doesn't fear a mistake. Certainly,
I don't think it's necessarily bad that he doesn't fear mistakes.
I didn't say it's bad. I'm just saying he doesn't. He throws an interception every game. He's a league leader in interceptions the last 5 years.
Yeah, well, it's not that he doesn't fear. It's that he makes the mistakes. Not that he doesn't fear it.
But he's not scared to make a mistake. So he'll throw the ball up into triple coverage.
Yeah. So it's my criticism is not that he's not afraid to make a mistake. It's more that he's not always very smart about it, which I don't know. I don't care. I'm a Jet fan, so I guess that's kind of good for the Jets. Of course, I do want to talk a little bit about the Jets losing to the Raiders in what felt like a gut punch. that last, I mean, I don't know. They weren't supposed to win anyway. I ended up picking them on the football. I ended up picking the Jets on the Football Friday pick 'em. For some reason, I had a sneaky suspicion that they were going to end up winning. Because it just, I don't know, the Jets should probably be in tank mode right now. I mean, the weird thing is that a lot of Jet fans are still sort of like hopeful about the season. But if you look at this soberly and dispassionately, I think they almost have no shot. Like, let's put it this way. If you told me that if the Jets were to make the playoffs this year, I will die, I would not be afraid.
No, I disagree with you. I disagree with you. They have 3 games that they're certainly going to win: Houston, Atlanta, and Washington, and New England. They play New England as well, so they're going to get, in my mind, at least 8 wins. And if they can beat Miami 1 or 2 times, they'll get at least 9 wins. So I think that they're still. I think 9 and 8 can make the playoffs. So I think that they are still alive. And I don't see it as pessimistically as you.
Let me be clear. I'm not saying they're not still alive. I am saying they're not going to make it, is my point. I could still live to 120 years old. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, but the schedule is much more in their favor than it was at the start of the year. And they have Buffalo and Miami now left in the next 2 games, which is going to be very important. If they could win those 2 games, then they're pretty much close to the top of the division. So I don't think it's that bad.
Well, okay, they're going to Buffalo. First of all, the next 2 games I think are automatic losses. There's no way we win those games.
Oh my God,
there's no way.
The Dolphins, first of all, they already beat the Bills this year, and they always
at home. They beat the Bills at home.
They always play the Bills tough. And secondly, Miami is not that good. Miami's lost to every team of value that they've played.
The Jets are not a team of value. That's the problem.
They have the best defense in the NFL.
They do. They do have arguably the best defense in the NFL. And by the way, I'd be the first to tell you. First of all, you're right. They do have one of the best defenses in the NFL. It is an elite defense. It's also true they have one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the worst offenses, and one of the worst offensive lines.
The question that I would ask to you is, when does the blame stop being so much on Zach Wilson and start to go to coaching at some point? Because in the last 3 games, they've had 31 points and 25 penalties.
Yeah, I think coaching has a lot to do with it.
They scored. They haven't scored a touchdown in 2 games. They scored a touchdown on I think it was one of the first or second drives of the game, and Zach Wilson ran a touchdown in that he stepped out of bounds on. And then the very next play, they scored a touchdown, and it got called back for a holding. And then they didn't score on the drive. Didn't score a touchdown, kicked the field goals. They're really good between the 20-yard lines, but once they get into the red zone, it's like they're allergic to scoring touchdowns, but the coaching is terrible. I mean, I don't know how long he was going to wait for the timeout.
To be fair, and you mentioned this to me, we don't know when he called it.
We don't know when he called it, but yeah, I mean, that's true. We don't know when he called it, but the game is miscoached, and they obviously don't do anything to deter committing penalties because they commit 1 million of them.
Yeah, you're right. I think coaching is horrible. Zach, look, there's a lot of blame to go around. Like, blame is not really a finite resource. Okay, a lot of people can be blamed. What I'll say is, you're right. Both those things very well could be true. I don't think. First of all, I'll be the first to tell you, in a lot of these games that I've watched, they didn't necessarily lose because of Zach Wilson.
No.
Although Zach Wilson does lack the ability to win a lot of games. I mean, like, usually when they lose, Zach Wilson doesn't play well, but it's usually more than just about Zach Wilson. Like the game against the Chargers, I mean, it didn't help that they only scored 6 points, but a lot of that was special teams. So there's a whole lot of things that go around. What I'll also say is, and I'll add something to that, I think the GM, I think Joe Douglas deserves a lot of blame. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old. Okay, he's 40 years old. 40-year-olds getting injured playing softball is not uncommon, let alone professional sport. he should have anticipated the not so unpredictable possibility of Aaron Rodgers getting injured at some point, and his next best quarterback and his backup quarterback was Zach Wilson. I mean, how do you have nobody? And not only that, there were other quarterbacks available that you could have gotten that maybe would have been better than Zach Wilson that were on the market.
Yeah, I agree. And now they then to only bring in Trevor Siemian after the injury when it's week 1, you could bring somebody else in that could learn the playbook at some point. But the other thing that I would point out is their offense also is they have some weapons, but not a lot. Garrett Wilson, he's really good, but he's not to the point to his prime yet. And Ozama's over the hill and a few guys, but they don't use like when McCole Hardman was on the team, they never used him. They had Randall Cobb in most of those plays. Dalvin Cook, they rarely ever use. And when they put him in against the Raiders, he did pretty well.
They don't use him because
they never used. Breece Hall barely got used against Vegas.
Yeah.
So they also the way that they do the personnel is terrible. I mean, so the team has a lot of problems past Zach Wilson. But now they're going to. I think that the question was answered where they said there was a question in the offseason of now that you have Rodgers, even though he's only going to be here for 2 years, are you going to stick with Zach Wilson? I don't see any way that they stick with Zach Wilson. I think they're going to have to find another quarterback.
Yeah, you're right. Although I do think Zach Wilson's improved compared to last year. Not that that's saying much. You're right. They're going to have to. I mean, first of all, Rodgers is not coming back this year. That is just a ridiculous fantasy.
I agree, and I don't think that. I don't think that. I think it would be also. I agree that he. I think that he wants to come back, but it would be really, really dumb to. I think that the Jets still have a chance of the playoffs, but considering how the team is, they have no chance of winning the Super Bowl. So if you're not going to win the Super Bowl, why risk? If Rodgers got re-injured, he would never play football again. So why risk bringing him in too early? Given
the rest of the league, I don't think the Jets have much of a chance. Look, a lot of Jet fans are being optimistic about this season. I am not. Excuse me. I am not at all optimistic about this season. Let's just look at it this way, okay? The Jets have either the Bills or the Dolphins ahead of them. One of those two teams, I don't think the Jets are beating out either of those teams at the end of the season. I feel like there's no way. Okay. So that's one team so there's only 3 spots. So there's that. There is, wait, hold on a second. Let me just look at, hold on a second. Let me just look at this. Okay. So there's, so like I said, one of those 2 teams in the division. There's Pittsburgh. Basically the entire AFC North, other than maybe the Browns now because Deshaun Watson is out. So that's 3 teams. Not to mention, I didn't even mention the Chargers, who are a much better team than the Jets and also have the tiebreaker against them. So I feel like there isn't much of a chance for the Jets to actually make the playoffs. Assuming this goes the way that it does. I mean, you have 3 okay. I would say maybe not, like I said, maybe not the Browns now because of the Deshaun Watson injury, but you at least have the Bengals and you have you at least have the Bengals and
Steelers or Ravens,
who are both better than the Jets.
Yeah. Well, but so then say that that's right and say that the Jets don't make the playoffs. Then would you think that you would fire Saleh then?
No, I'm not sure if I would. Because we still have a shot next year. Like I don't know if I would fire Saleh if the Jets don't make the playoffs with. I mean, like who could take? I mean, Bill Belichick couldn't take the Jets to the playoffs with. I mean, this offense. There's no way.
Yeah, but I just think that's horrible. I mean, you have to think about the teams in the last 5 years. The Carolina Panthers have had 8 games where they haven't scored a touchdown. The Giants, who are a joke of a franchise and are the worst franchise in the NFL currently, have had 8 games where they haven't scored a touchdown. In that same span, the Jets have had 17.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jets have had double the amount of games. The offense is horrible. The game against the Giants had -9 passing yards, and the Jets realistically should have lost the game. The game against the Chargers had 131 passing yards, and the Jets lost the game by 3 touchdowns.
If anything, they would fire Nathaniel Hackett. What I think the way it works is that if the offense is bad, they're not going to blame Saleh.
Yeah, but Saleh's done realistically has not done anything since he's been at the Jets.
No, but the point is he's a defensive-minded head coach. Usually, if there's a defensive-minded head coach and the problem is with the offense, they tend to blame the offensive coordinator. Because Nathaniel Hackett runs the offense.
Yeah. I agree. Maybe there's going to be some changes, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think they'll blame Hackett before they blame Saleh. Because, look, Saleh's a defensive-minded head coach. And by the way, you need to know both sides of the ball, obviously. But every head coach typically is very specialized in one area or the other. And the Jets defense is very good. So I think that's part of it would be one thing if the Jets had a terrible defense.
Right.
But their defense is very good. And I don't really think they're I don't think they're going to fire Saleh, partly for that reason, but also because they would probably feel like if Rodgers comes back and is healthy, they will have there's like a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's like, well, maybe Saleh, just because Saleh couldn't do it with Zach Wilson doesn't mean he can't do it with Rodgers. It's not like they're not so much looking to place blame on anybody as much. I mean, the truth is, come to think of it, I don't even know if they'll ever fire Nathaniel Hackett as long as Rodgers is there.
Yeah, I don't think they'll fire Hackett.
Especially after one season. I don't think it's fair to fire Saleh. I don't think he's that bad of a head coach. Although he makes some questionable decisions. But I don't know if that's enough. I don't think after 2 years. I mean, you have to be Adam Gase level bad for that to happen.
Right.
I mean, even Todd Bowles got 4 years. And Todd Bowles so far Todd Bowles is far worse than Saleh. So, I mean, like I said, I think this year is just a wash. But if anything, if we're going to blame anybody, it's Joe Douglas or whoever is responsible.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Nonsense of not trying to get somebody else other than Zach Wilson. Carson Wentz was available. They could have gotten Carson Wentz. I mean, okay, Carson Wentz might not be a Hall of Famer, but it's something. It's something. He can still be a starter. Maybe or we could have gotten what's his name, Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I agree. That's the problem. I agree.
We could have done something, and we would have had with a serviceable quarterback. We could, or halfway decent quarterback, we might have had a shot, and we could have won some of these games. But without a serviceable quarterback, I mean, you can have the best defense in the world, but if your offense is completely inept, you're not going to win games. It's just that simple. I mean, if I can see that, they should be able to see it.
Certainly.
And by the way, for everybody saying that the Jets still have a chance, as good as they looked against the Eagles, since then, they've been somewhere between awful and god-awful. They almost lost to the Giants They almost lost to the Giants, who right now with Tommy DeVito are the worst team in the league by far. The Giants had -8 pass yards. The Jets should have lost that game. If not for Graham Gano making a field goal, he makes 90% of the time. The Jets should have lost that game. They got killed by the Chargers, and then the Chargers are just a better team. They got killed by the Chargers at home, and then they just lost to the Raiders. So two of those teams that they lost to were literal backup quarterbacks. What reason do we have to believe that the Jets will actually turn this around? I mean, some of these games that I see are automatic losses. The Dolphins are both losses. We are not winning either of those games. We're going to lose to the Bills. We're not winning any of those 3 games. Okay. And then all the other games are a bunch of maybes. The Patriots are the only team that I'm very confident the Jets will beat, and maybe the Browns, depending on their quarterback situation. The Commanders, the Falcons, and the Texans are all sort of, I think we'll win 1 or 2. I don't think we'll win all 3. So that just leaves us at that leaves us at maybe 8
8
wins.
and 9. 9 or 8.
Wins.
Yes.
Hmm?
Yeah, 8
So,
or 9.
But the problem is the Chargers, like I said, I don't think we're at best, we're going to be in like third place. Like it is safe to say we're going to be third place in the division. That doesn't take into account the Chargers, who, even if they have a bad season, they have a tiebreaker over us and they'll probably finish ahead of us anyway. Because the Chargers are still a good team. They just played the toughest part of their schedule the first half of the season. Not to mention the Steelers and probably the Bengals, who are going to be ahead of the Jets. I feel like there really is just no way. There's almost no way it actually pans out that way.
Well, yeah, we'll have to see.
I guess the season's not as over as it is for the Giants, but I don't have a lot of hope.
Well, but the Giants are the Giants have a flaw at every position, coaching as well.
Yeah.
They're really bad. I mean, the Giants opened as a 10-point dog to the Washington Commanders. I mean, that shows you how bad they are. And Tommy DeVito actually outscored Daniel Jones by 17 points against the Cowboys. Yeah. For as bad as he is.
Daniel Jones is just that bad.
Yeah, the Giants have so many flaws. I mean, and I think that I don't think there's been a regression. Maybe you could I think you could match it up to Ben McAdoo's second year, where the Giants made the playoffs and they looked like a good team, and then the next season they were 3-13 and McAdoo just lost the locker room. It's probably akin to this, or like Buck Showalter this year for the Mets. I mean, Daboll, I think, is in a free fall in terms of the coaching ability.
Yeah, it seems like he might be. So we want to talk about this a little bit. Deshaun Watson, he had a season-ending shoulder injury. So this probably puts them, I would say, in last place in that division, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, I know he has a shoulder injury. It's possible maybe he could go get a massage to get it fixed. But other than that, this was a big news. I mean, it's very Cleveland Browns-esque. They won probably their biggest win, like their craziest win in probably since the franchise moved back to Cleveland, and came back to win that game somehow miraculously. And then the next day, Deshaun Watson is out. And it sucks for Cleveland too, because normally if you were 6-3, you'd have a little bit of a cushion, but they have no cushion because the rest of the division is that good. So
yeah,
Cleveland, I think, is in trouble. I mean, they also played Arizona one week and they didn't score, so they haven't played like the toughest schedule so far this season. So I don't know really even how good they are, but they're going to have to go to PJ Walker now.
They did beat the Niners with PJ Walker, so you never know.
Yeah. I mean, they needed the Niners to miss 2 field goals as well, but yeah. And also Christian McCaffrey on D. Samuel left the game, but yes.
Okay, so I do we got to go through our 3 NFL picks for the weekend. So you picked all right, so one is the Jets at Bills. You can go first. I think you could probably figure out what I'm going to say about this.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Jets for the same reasons that I was talking about. I don't think they're that bad of a team. I think the Bills, if you saw like Trayvon Diggs tweeted that Stephon Diggs needs to leave, and Stephon Diggs had a problem at the start of the year, I think the Bills might be a team that collapses. I could see them collapsing. And the Jets play the Bills very good all the time, and the Jet defense is really good against Josh Allen.
That part is true. The Jets defense is good against Josh Allen. The Jets have an elite defense, and Josh Allen falls into a lot of traps and makes a lot of mistakes. I also think that the Bills loss to the Jets a lot of it was special teams and also just bad coaching from the Bills. I think like the Bills defense really blew it against the Jets. But I'll be the first to tell you, I think the Bills are going to kill us. I think it's like 2 scores or more. I think they're out for revenge. Keep in mind it's in Buffalo, much harder. So it's not a home game, and everything kind of went our way against the Bills the first time. Like I said, there was lots of special teams plays that did it that that won the game for us. We were losing most of the game. They outplayed us most of the game. I don't think the Bills are real. I think the Bills should cover 7 points. I don't think the Jets have much. And not to mention the way the Jets have played the past couple of weeks, they've looked terrible, all of them. They haven't looked good any of these games. So
I thought you were going to say the Jets. I thought you were going to say the Jets might not score 7.
Well, yeah, that too. They might not score 7. They might score. I mean, the Bills. I could see the Bills winning this. Well, I don't think it'll be 10-0, but like, I guess I could see it being low scoring. I don't think the bottom line is I don't think the Jets are going to be able to score enough to cover this spread. And like I said, when everything goes your way and at home on special teams and everything like that, I think the Bills aren't good. I don't think it's going to happen every time. That's not going to happen again. So I'll have to go with the Bills.
Okay.
All right, Chargers at Packers. I love the Chargers this game, -3. I think the Chargers are the best 4-5 team I've ever seen. They have a very good offense, and the Packers really aren't very good. But the Chargers, it's more about the Chargers. I think the Chargers are still a very good team. Most of the teams that they lost to were very, very good teams, like arguably top 5 teams. So I still think the Chargers are good. They should be able to cover this spread.
Yeah, I agree. I would take.
All right, so I'm also going to take the Vikings at Broncos -2.5. I like the Vikings. I like the Vikings +2.5. Feels like a little bit of a risk. I don't know. I feel like Denver might be in for a letdown.
Yeah, I'd take the Vikings as well.
All right, so Cowboys at Panthers.
Cowboys are going to kill the Panthers. The Cowboys are one of the better teams in the NFL, and the Panthers are atrocious and really made the wrong decision with their quarterback draft, and they're just a mess right now. The Cowboys are going to kill them.
I think it was David Tepper who wanted.
Yeah, David Tepper wanted Bryce Young because he ordered scallops at dinner, and he was impressed with his dinner order apparently, and that's why he picked Bryce Young over CJ Stroud.
What an idiot! Okay, honestly, I could see this being like a James Dolan thing for the Panthers,
right?
With David Tepper. By the way, I was in Charlotte at the radio station when David Tepper first bought the team.
Yeah.
So I remember his press conference and everything.
And they've been terrible since then.
Yeah, they've been terrible. All right, so one more.
Yeah, Eagles at Chiefs. I got the Chiefs. I think the Eagles are a good team, but I don't think they're as good as they were last year. They haven't really blown anybody out. They lost to the Jets, but you said you don't think are that good. And the Chiefs, I think, are a really good team, and it's really hard to beat the Chiefs at primetime in Kansas City. And 2.5, you really just need a field goal. I would take the Chiefs.
All right, cool. So college football. I do have a confession to make. Remember, I texted you and said, "Should I take Oregon or USC?"
Yes.
And you told me USC. Well, I faded you. I took Oregon, and I lost. Well, because what happened was the last time I asked you if I should take TCU or Texas Tech, and you said TCU, and then I lost it. Yeah, I took Oregon because I thought that I don't know. I'm not impressed with USC at all. I don't think USC is any good, but it was those 2 touchdowns, those 2 sort of garbage time touchdowns that killed me.
Right, which is why the number was too big, and you don't like to touch big numbers, and like this late in the season, especially.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't very smart of me to do that. I mean, the new playoff rankings are out. This is the best year for the college. This is the best year for the college football playoffs in terms of just sheer drama.
Yes. It's the best argument year we've ever had.
What's that?
It's the best year for arguments we've ever had.
Yeah, it's the best year for arguments. It's one of the stronger years we've ever seen. Possibly the strongest in I don't know, since the playoffs started.
Yeah, I agree. It's there's only really two teams that I can think of that should definitely be in, and then the rest of the two are going to be up for a bunch of spots. So,
Well, you're right. Well, an SEC winner, a Big Ten winner.
well, I would say Georgia and Michigan certainly should definitely be in.
Assuming Georgia and Michigan win.
I would say even if they lost their conference and went 13-1, like, or
well, the thing is, let's say Michigan and Georgia both win their respective conferences. Obviously, they're both in. If Florida State goes undefeated and wins their conference, they're also in.
Yeah, which they probably will.
And then Texas, assuming they win the Big 12, they're also in. But it begs the question, well, what about Oregon if they win, or Washington if they go undefeated?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, and we're going to have to see what happens. But the Pac-12 title game obviously will be big as well. So,
well, all of it will. Now, I don't think that all of these teams are going to remain undefeated. I don't think Alabama is going to beat Georgia, but I don't know. Crazier things have happened. Texas went on the road to beat Alabama. Nobody really thought that would happen. I'll say what I think the committee does is they take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
They do the thing that tends to be more popular. And to be fair, I do side with the committee more than most people. Mainly because I think that, like, people often accuse them of SEC bias, and okay, I suppose there might be some truth to that, but a lot of times the SEC bias is just the SEC being a very strong conference. Like,
right.
Like I don't know if that's really SEC bias or if it's just like the SEC is that good, which they typically are. People often say they're very biased in favor of Alabama. I don't think that's true. Demonstrably, I would say that's not true. They're not biased towards Alabama. If anything, they've tried to dispel that notion by being overly punitive of Alabama. I mean, I don't think that they are in any way. I don't think Alabama really does get the benefit of the doubt. I just don't see any truth to that. I think that 4 years ago, after they lost, I think they purposely dropped them further down than they probably should have. I don't know. I just don't think there's really any truth to that notion. The one thing I'll say is I think they're way too obsessed with record. I think they look at, like, it seems like they put the tiers of teams strictly in terms of record, and not so much in terms of, like, the full holistic, how you can holistically view each team. I don't think that, first of all, I think there should be somewhat of an expanded playoff.
There's going to be the 12 team. Yeah.
I know that. I know that. And I'm still against the 12-team playoff because that is way too much. But 6 to 8 teams, I think, is probably the sweet spot, especially this year. And the main reason, like, I used to think 4 teams was the best. I don't think that anymore. I've rethought my position because a lot of time, and it's not because it's mainly because a lot of times teams that are right outside of the top 4 might be better teams than teams that are inside the top 4. I think that in 2015, for instance, Ohio State was definitely good enough to compete in the playoff. I would rather have seen them in than Michigan State, but Michigan State beat them. So you have to put Michigan State in, obviously. But I think Stanford very easily could have competed in the playoff against those teams. Like, I think that it is very often the case that teams right outside the top 4 might be better than teams within the top 4, which is why I think that a slightly expanded playoff might be a good idea. But I think that what you have to look at with these rankings is that what it essentially is them setting up what's going to happen, like in scenario X.
Yeah.
So, like, the reason Washington is right outside the top 4 is because either Michigan or Ohio State is one of those teams is
going to lose. Right.
Their own destiny.
Yeah, and Ohio's. Yeah, I agree, and I think obviously Michigan's good. I wanted to talk about a team that's not going to make the college football playoff, by the way, and that's Penn State. It's Michigan obviously beat Penn State this year. It's crazy to me that Penn State essentially plays the same exact season every single season.
Yeah, they do.
They'll kill every opponent. Even when they played Auburn, when Auburn was pretty good and had Bo Nix, they were demonstrably better than Auburn. But they can't get over the hump of beating Michigan or Ohio State. Now, they've split with Michigan recently, but not when Michigan was really good. James Franklin's 3-17 against top 10 teams. So I don't know if they're going to make a change at Penn State. Obviously, they already fired the offensive coordinator, but it's crazy that they have the same season. And also last season, they did win the Rose Bowl, but to me, it kind of doesn't count as much because they were only in the Rose Bowl because Michigan and Ohio State were in the college football playoff.
Yeah, they were the third best team in the conference.
Right.
I think there might be some true. I don't know. I don't know if they would fire James Franklin. The thing is, James Franklin is a good coach. He's a good recruiter, but he's not a very good in-game coach. He makes a lot of really bad mistakes. I don't know. I mean, part of it is that Ohio State and Michigan are sort of insurmountable obstacles. But if you can't get over it, I guess he could be on the chopping block.
Yeah, and they can't get over it. I mean, he does make dumb decisions. Like, you have to remember, he chose Sean Clifford over Will Levis. That basically made Will Levis transfer.
Yeah,
and they had problems at quarterback last year. I mean, I don't know how they really improve. And the big issue for Penn State is that it's the only conference in college football where one division is just light years better than the other division. So Penn State pretty much have a huge uphill battle to even get to the Big Ten championship. Where if they were in the other division, they would easily get to the Big Ten championship every single year.
I'm pretty sure Big Ten is getting rid of. Yeah, the Big Ten is ending divisions.
Yeah, but only once they expand. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm talking about like in recent years, they would have gotten to the Big Ten championship every year. If they were in the West. They were in the other division.
The problem with divisions, I think teams. I mean, that is so often true. It's not so much like that. It used to be like that in the SEC, where the SEC East was horrible and the SEC West was like a powerhouse.
Right.
That's why it's a good idea to not have divisions. I mean, with this whole conference realignment thing, we don't know how all that stuff is going to work out. The problem I have with Alabama being ranked so low is because the problem is they lost a game that they scheduled.
Correct.
They lost a non-conference game. This is basically sending the signal to every AD in the country. Okay, call up and cancel every single tough game that you. Yes, it does.
No.
Yes, it does. It is sending. Okay, the way this thing works is that it is sending the signal. It is telling every single AD in the country to call up and cancel every single one of your tough non-conference games. That's what it's doing.
No. What do you think? What do you think that? First of all, Alabama. But you could have said that if they had gotten in last year, which they could have gotten in, they would have gotten in on the strength of that they went to Texas and beat Texas. And what's better for a program to play Eastern Michigan on SEC Network or on Big Ten Network, or to play Texas on the first game was on Nude on Fox, and the second game was primetime on ABC. So what's better for a program, exposure and money-wise, is to play the big games. And now it won't matter. If there was a 12-team playoff, it won't matter as much, so that you'll want to get those big games.
Well, okay. The size of the playoff has nothing to do with my point. It depends on.
Yes, it does, because you're saying what they're.
No, it doesn't, because it depends on the procedure, not so much the number of teams. Because if that's the case, maybe it wouldn't to Alabama, who is more likely to be in, but the same thing would happen. It would just be further down the line. You understand what I'm saying? It's like the difference between 12 and 13. If all they care about is record, then if the difference between 12 and 13 is just record, it's the same thing. It's just with different teams.
I disagree. I think the teams want to play these big games.
But except they're not incentivized to. A lot of times these teams are, I mean, I don't know what's better for a program per se exactly. I don't know. I'm not in that position. But what I can tell you is what is better for their playoff chances. Alabama's playoff chances are significantly lower because they played Texas and lost.
Right, so you're saying exactly what I'm saying, that now with the expanded playoff, it won't matter as much.
But that's not true. It might not matter to Alabama, but it would matter to other teams if this procedure stays the same, all else being equal. I mean, now it is possible that the procedure will be different with 12 teams. I have no reason to believe that. But that's my issue has nothing to, what I'm saying has nothing to do with the size of the playoff. It has to do with the number of, it has to do with how they decide the playoff. Now, like I said, it might be different they might do it differently as long as there's 12 teams, but I see no reason to believe that. I mean, this same conflict would happen. It would just be further down the line. So it's the same thing. Now, that's my issue primarily with with Alabama, not because, if Alabama had played, Mercer instead of Texas, they'd be a top 4 team. That is undeniable. That is undeniable. And they'd control their own destiny, which right now they don't.
Yeah, well, yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Well,
if Alabama wins out, but yeah.
Well, okay, fine. They do control their own destiny, but they'd be in a better position. Now, like I said, I do support an expanded playoff, just not 12 teams.
Yeah, but you could also see it. You could also see it from the side of the victor too, which is that Texas is only in the conversation because they beat Alabama. I mean, Texas has the loss that Texas has to Oklahoma looks much worse now than it did initially.
I mean, sure. I think there is somewhat. Yes, I think because they went on the road and beat Alabama, that certainly helped them a lot. Yes,
it's a gamble play, but it's a high risk, high reward situation, certainly.
Yeah, but I think that it should always be rewarded, if anything. I don't think a team should be penalized for losing a non-conference game, especially early in the season. It doesn't always. I'm not saying Alabama should be ranked ahead of Texas or anything, but. I mean,
but Ohio State got to the playoff that year that they lost to Oregon in the second game of the season. So it's earlier in the season too is better because there's a lot of recency bias as well.
Well, I think the recency bias also makes sense because you're also sort of judging how good the teams are in the moment.
Right.
I mean, I don't think that a loss in early September should be the same as one in November. I generally feel that way. You think it should be the same?
Yeah, the record is the record.
But but there's a lot more nuances to the record.
That's how they do it. That's how they do it in the NCAA tournament. If you have a win, if you have a bad loss in November or a bad loss in February, it doesn't matter. It's a bad loss. It's a bad loss.
It's a lot different with the NCAA tournament because there's 68 teams.
Yeah, but if they're judging teams that are going to get in or not, they're judging the wins based on resume, same as they're doing this.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think college football does it better than college basketball. I think if anything, college basketball should try to emulate college football.
Well, college football has a lot less losses to deal with too, but yeah, most teams haven't lost in the college football.
I mean, college football is just objectively speaking a more popular sport than college basketball. I mean, don't you think it would make more sense for college basketball to want to emulate college football than the other way around?
How? I don't know what you're talking about.
No, what I'm saying is, like, you're saying they do it like this in college basketball.
When they're grading the resume to put the team into the
but what I'm saying is that, like, why should college football do it the way college basketball does it?
They should grade wins as a win. A win is a win. Loss. It doesn't matter when it happens.
But it's not in college football. There's so many more nuances to it. Rather than just a win is a win and a loss is a loss. I mean, it depends on who you lose to, how you lose to them. I mean, all of these things matter. If you lose to Ohio State on the road on a last-second field goal, that's a lot different than losing to Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
All right. So so we have our picks. Hold on. Washington and Oregon State. We both have this. You can go first.
Yeah, I'm taking Oregon State. Washington. This is an odd line to me because most people would assume that Washington would be the favorite in this game. So this is a rat line. Something's going on. So most people are going to take Washington in this game. So I'll take Oregon State. And also, the Pac-12 lives to cannibalize itself and keep its teams out of the playoff. So that's why I'm taking Oregon State.
Yes, I am with you 100%. I'm going to take Oregon State. This feels like a trap game. I don't think Washington is that good. They are the worst undefeated team this year by far. I think they're even weaker than Florida State.
And they have they've had a gauntlet schedule that this is. So at some point they've had Utah, they've had Oregon, they've had a gauntlet schedule. So I don't think it's possible to go undefeated in a gauntlet schedule.
But also, Oregon State is kind of like the Purdue of the Pac-12. They always spoil.
They do, and they have a pretty good team this year.
What's that?
Yeah, they have a pretty good team this year as well.
They do. Oregon State, they play tough. They play up to their competition a lot.
Yeah, Oregon State. If Oregon State has a good ending to the season, they could be in a New Year's Six bowl.
Yeah, I think, I definitely like Oregon State a lot this game. So we're in agreement on that.
Yes.
Okay, Kansas State at Kansas plus 7.5. I like Kansas plus 7.5. Getting points at home. They're getting a full touchdown at home.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and I could see this being a high-scoring game. Kansas is still pretty good. So, yeah, Kansas should – I mean, this line might change by the time this comes out. But right now, 7.5, I'm taking 7.5.
Yeah, I agree.
So you took Rutgers at Penn State?
Yeah, I'm taking Rutgers. I think Rutgers are a pretty good team. I think they had a bad game against Iowa. Iowa has a good defense. Penn State does have a good defense, but I like Rutgers in this game. I think Penn State might be on a come down. They might feel like their season is kind of over now, and they'll win the next two games because they're playing Rutgers and Michigan State. But I think
even worse than Rutgers.
Yeah, and Rutgers has a good team. They have 7 wins this year, so I could see Rutgers covering the number.
6 wins.
Yeah, 6 wins. Excuse me.
I disagree. I'm going to take Penn State. I think they're going to kill them. Penn State typically blows out these games. Okay, so I also have. Hold on a second. Oh, Illinois at Iowa. I like Iowa -3. Iowa they're a bizarrely good team in a weird way. I think Iowa is going to, what I think is going to happen? I think this is going to be a bizarre score. I think Iowa is going to win like 5-0.
I agree. I was going to say, I think Iowa wins 10-6.
8-3.
Yeah.
8-3 or something like that. Yeah. It'll be like 2 field goals and a safety.
Yes, I agree. I would take Iowa.
Like it is. Look, I would not subject myself to watching this shit show of a game. If I weren't betting on it, but if I have money on it, I'll watch it. That's the only way.
I agree.
Utah at Arizona.
Yeah, I don't understand. Arizona should not be a 1-point favorite here. Arizona beat Colorado, who sucks. They don't really have a great win. Utah is a good team. They lost to Washington, but they're still a good team. I'm taking Utah here. I think Arizona is still a little bit overrated.
Yeah, I think I would probably go with Utah too. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about this Draymond Green fight. So that happened with Rudy Gobert. Draymond Green thinks he's Dennis Rodman or something. He's a little. I think Draymond Green is crazy. I don't know what the hell this was even about. But Rudy Gobert said something that was very. Hold on a second. Let me pull this up.
And Draymond's also been suspended 5 games now for this. So
good. He needs to stop this nonsense. Hold on a second.
Well, so what happened was there was a little. It was at the very start of the game. It was 0-0. There was a fight. Gobert was pulling on Klay Thompson's jersey, and then it turned into a fight. And I think that Draymond Green thought that Gobert was like choke holding Klay Thompson, which he wasn't. But so then Draymond obviously puts him in the chokehold. But Draymond obviously, in my mind, hates Rudy Gobert because he did not let the chokehold go for the longest time. Like he was dragging him.
Yeah, I mean, but the funny thing is that he said, hold on a second. He said if he knew how to choke, it said it was a long time, and if he knew how to choke, it could have been way worse.
It actually could have been. I was actually like thinking like not to put into the Adam Schefter assault category when he tweeted assault after the incident in the Browns game, or like when Judd Apatow said that Will Smith could have killed Chris Rock on the stage. But Draymond Green actually legit could have killed Rudy Gobert. Like if Rudy Gobert was a littler guy, that chokehold like legitimately would have probably put him out.
Well, the point is, I think he doesn't know how to choke.
Probably not. I mean, Draymond is. I like Draymond Green a lot. He's a relic of the past. He's certainly a '90s style player, like you said. Sort of Dennis Rodman like. But they used to really fight in the '90s, and Draymond is sort of that esque. But
I mean, the thing is, they don't allow it in basketball.
They don't, and the antics that Draymond has also kind of have diminished with his play. Like they get more noticeable when he's not playing as well. Like he basically only got his contract because he was such a good player and so intricate to their championships, but not based on his play of recent years.
You have to remember, he's been a dirty player for a long time. He purposely kicked Steven Adams in the nuts.
Yes.
And he didn't even get suspended for that. And LeBron, too, which, by the way, kicking guys in the nuts is the biggest bitch move, even in a fight, let alone a basketball game.
I agree with that, yeah.
I mean, he did it twice, literally twice, and didn't even get suspended the first time. And by the way, him getting suspended during the finals very well could have been the reason they lost.
That was the reason they lost, yeah.
I mean,
and yeah, he has had the antics a lot, but like I said, when he was kicking Steven Adams or whatever, he was also putting up a lot of points, and he's a great defensive player, but he doesn't put up as many points. And last season, I think obviously was derailed for the Warriors when he punched Jordan Poole in the face. So that also is, even though it was an off-court incident, obviously is in his.
Well, it was during practice.
Yeah, but even though it was an off-court incident, it adds to his his resume.
Yeah, because you don't punch your teammates in the face. By the way, Michael Jordan punched Steve Kerr in the face.
Right. And they went on to win the championship.
We like to forget about that. And you know what? When Michael Jordan does it, he's competitive.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's this weird world where in the sports world, we like spin everything Michael Jordan does into a positive thing because competitors just punch their teammates, their own teammates.
Correct.
It's kind of funny how that works. I mean, he has to be suspended. I like fighting in sports. I do. I personally
agree.
But you can't allow it. I mean, this is nuts. I mean,
yeah, of course. Yeah, of course he get suspended. But yeah, I like this the more physical. There was a fight in the Spurs Thunder game, and there was a fight in the Grizzlies Laker game. I like more physical, and a lot of people have been saying over the years that the NBA players don't care as much anymore, and it's good to see them actually get in, be emotional and get into these incidences.
Yeah, I think people often say, people say the NBA is soft. It's not in the physical era anymore. First of all, just because the game is not as physical doesn't mean the level of play has gone down.
No.
If anything, the level of play has gone up since the night.
Right.
So it's just ridiculous to say the level of play has gone down. The players are definitely better. But some people, people who were around in the 70s and 80s and 90s, they have a lot of nostalgia for the past, and they want the game to be like they remember it when they were younger.
Well, but the people forget certain things. Like, for instance, one of the biggest arguments about today's NBA is that you can't hand check somebody, but they fail to mention that you could only hand check in a very small area of the court. Like, you couldn't hand check somebody at the 3-point line. So that gets messed away. And also yes, it was more physical, but look at the size of Larry Bird and look at the size of Giannis and guys like that now. So
yeah, imagine Larry Bird in the NBA now.
Right.
So all that stuff is very true. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about this brawl that almost happened on the Senate floor. I think I would have liked to see this. So there was a member of the Teamsters union and a senator. I forget his name. And he basically the senator challenged the guy to a fight.
Yes.
I think they should allow this. I think democracy is overrated. I think we should just have politicians wrestle each other and for office. And whoever wins the wrestling match gets like the belt. And like in professional wrestling.
I agree. The one thing I would say about this is if you watch the video, so the senator's name is Mullen from Oklahoma. He's a Republican senator from Oklahoma, but he was basically reading I don't know what it was that he was reading, but it was the words of the Teamsters guy, the leader of the Teamsters, who was saying about Mullen that Mullen like lies about being self-made, whatever. But the point is, at the end of the sentence, he says that he would say it to him anytime, any place, whatever. And then Mullen says, stand your ass up. And then the Teamster guy says, you stand your ass up. Mullen stands up, but the Teamsters guy doesn't. If you're going out telling people, I'm going to find this guy anytime, any place, you got to stand up in that moment. You got to stand up any moment. You
got to stand up.
And Bernie Sanders was like, sit down. I agree. It absolutely should happen more. The way that, especially now, like I think with social media, like people think they can get away with really saying anything in real life and not having any consequence to it. So the way that people talk now and like not ending up in a fight is insane. So I would love to see this more.
Yeah, that would have been pretty funny though. I mean, like you just have to have like a nonpartisan ref.
Yeah, it would be electric, and the way even senators like talk about each other right now, like even on the floor, like in the House, like it's like if this was said in a bar, this would turn into a fight. So like, you would love to see it. I mean, like imagine like it would be electric to see like a big argument and Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders just duke it out like on the on the floor.
Well, it would certainly incentivize politicians to be like more physically fit and able to fight.
Yes, I would like to, I think the one that I would like to see would be Nancy Pelosi and George Santos go at it at the end of the
I think George Santos should be a professional wrestler. That would be pretty funny.
He's probably won about 3 WWE belts if you ask him, but yeah, I agree. This was an electric moment. I thought Bernie Sanders should have let them go. If you watch the video, not only does the guy stand up, but he starts to take his wedding ring off. So
like he was actually going to do it. He was
actually going to do it. But the crazy thing is, if you watch like the wide of the video, for him to get to the guy, he would have like had to walk out of this whole like area. Like it would have been very like anticlimactic, but it would have been an absolutely electric moment, and we certainly need more of it. Because politics is a very boring game, and this stuff would absolutely escalate it. It's like
that would be pretty incredible. And by the way, we'd be able to like bet on it.
Yes, it would be an absolutely electric.
I would watch that before I watch like the UFC or MMA.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I would bet. I mean, I don't know what the betting odds would look like, but
yeah, I think they need to introduce more sniping, less. We've certainly seen, especially with Trump and stuff like that, less like civility in games,
like,
but
all the way without the civility.
Absolutely, I agree. This was a very funny moment, and I thought it would have been electric. And the guy was like, out there shit talking the senator, so it was. I thought it was an appropriate response.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for this show. We'll be back next week. You can find us at MTGPETB. I have to get used to saying that. It's a tongue twister. On Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok and Twitter. And you can follow us at Empty the Bench at youtube.com/ETB network. And find us on etbpodcast.com, wherever you find your podcasts. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week.